Welcome to a new episode of Delphine's Circle, where we uncover the mind, body, and spirit of success. Subscribe now for free to receive updates on the latest interviews. Then, sit back, relax, and tune in. Hi, Jewels, and welcome to the Circle.
Thank you, Delphine. I'm so happy to be here.
Me too. I've been so looking forward to having you here because what you do is very unique. And I first got to learn about you from seeing you on Dave Asprey's podcast. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got so excited. Like I couldn't even finish the podcast. And I went to your website and I bought a bunch of products. And then I got to meet you at the biohacking conference in Dallas. And I got to tell you, I've been so impressed with the products and honestly just with you and how you teach, and everything that you do is so authentic to you. And I'm so excited that I get to share you now with the audience. But because frequency is not something that is in everybody's vocabulary, let's start with really basically explaining what is frequency and why is frequency important to our health.
Mm. Well, I was saying that everything is frequency, but I also say you can't fake frequency. It's either you're connected to it and you're experiencing it, or you're not. And I think that's probably my biggest passion is knowing the difference. Because if you're not experiencing what I call frequency, you're experiencing a program or a belief system. And yes, you could say those have frequencies as well. But when we step into a world of frequency, things become very pure and very clean. And that's where we can speed up our healing. We can speed up manifesting. But if you think about frequency, you could also look at it as how frequent, right? And so when you're introducing frequency into your body, and that's what I love about the way that I've created the products, is they become a delivery system of specific frequencies. And frequencies have an intelligence, and we can use them to create different outcomes, you could say, or different states of consciousness.
I'm hearing a lot more about frequency, and it's becoming something that's becoming more part of our conversation. But I'm sure a lot of people, this is going to be the first time that they're really being exposed to this concept. I came across a little chart, and I'll show it on the screen. And what I love about it is it shows like, a list of things that lower our frequency and a list of things that raise our frequency. And they're like simple things like, exercise, sunlight, gratitude, hydration, and the things that lower our frequency, like screen time and not healthy foods and negativity. And I just think it's cool to have that little bit of a reminder. So I try to incorporate as many of the high frequency words as I can and or activities and decrease the things that lower your frequency. But you have a unique way because yours is about using your consciousness to shift to a frequency. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, when you were talking about just your list there, I feel like it's important to just bring this through, is that you can see what our words and what consciousness can do to something of frequency. And Dr. Emoto's about the water. I don't know. Do you know who Dr.
Mm-hmm.
Emoto? How he took the pictures of a negative word versus a positive word, and what happens to the crystals of the water. And that's what if you think about our body is all water.
Yeah.
And all I'm doing is using the tool that we were given to elevate whatever word you want to put there. So whether it's the frequency of your body, the frequency of your life, the frequency of just your overall well-being, your happiness. So many people, it's just like, I just want to be happy, right? I want to be healthy. Those are the things that matter when it all comes down to it. And using frequency is one way that we can attune our consciousness out of those negative beliefs or looping cycles into a pure state where we're entering that flow, where we're not looping in old behaviors, but we're always becoming our next. And that's a form of happiness right there when we start to live our potential.
Well, and what I think is so powerful about it is it goes from thinking that we are reacting and that our happiness is gonna be based upon something on the outside of us, to understanding that we are much more in control of our happiness, our joy, our health, everything, and by using frequency to our benefit, it's what we should all be doing, right?
For me, I feel as though we have an innate frequency that is who we are, and that frequency has an intelligence. And our job, if we choose to live our lives that way, is to attune our consciousness over and over again to the intelligence that's in the innate frequency of who we are. And some people might say that's source, divine, or however you want to see it, but it can be measured. And we can
Mhm.
talk about that in a little bit, but it's measured at 963 hertz.
What I think is so important to differentiate about what you're doing is, okay, so in life coaching, we talk a lot about shifting mindset, right? And shifting your mindset can be very helpful in helping to get out of those looping cycles that you're talking about. And they're tools that people can use. But that takes some time. It takes a while and it takes practice to learn how to shift out of an old mindset and to create a new habit of mindset. And when I started listening to your teachings, you teach about really just using the frequency kind of outside of the mind. So, not going through the mind through changing the mindset, but just attuning the cells outside of the mind. And that is not really anything I've heard any other spiritual teachers teach on. Where did that concept come from?
It really just over time because I used to really focus on the mind,
Mhm.
and I would have a conversation with somebody and we would kind of go to the root cause. I would go in and restructure the synapse responses to a higher frequency so that when they came out, they could hold consciousness in that higher frequency. And I actually had a spine injury in 2013, and I was supposed to I couldn't feel basically from here all the way to my hand, and after surgery, they couldn't fix it, they kinda wrote me off, "Go live your life," but I was in severe pain, it was a ton of nerve damage, and I was laying on my table, and I was doing the synapse responses, "Okay, let's reprogram this, let's reprogram this," and it just nothing was working, and I finally just shut my eyes, and I was just like, "Alright, if this is how I'm supposed to live the rest of my life, I'm gonna do it. But if there's something more, I'm 100% all in. Just show me what it is." And I had this burst of energy run through my spine, and it just went into every cell of my body, and I could see every cell of my body was shifting to a higher frequency, and can't really say how I knew what was happening because I was in an altered state. And when I got off the table, I went and took my dog for a walk, and I looked down and I was holding his leash in my left hand. It was the first time had used my hand in almost a year, and I just knew, and I'm getting chills. I just knew in that
Mhm.
moment, okay, it's the cells, it's not the mind. And I just became obsessed with just tracing the frequencies and how we can shift our cells to actually shift not just our mind, but shift the actual frequency of our physical body.
Oh my god, that's so powerful. I couldn't even look down because I was so enraptured with that story. So yeah, your teachings focus on 963, and that was the first time I had ever really heard reference to that frequency. Um, I have a red light bed. It uses frequency. 528 is probably the one that we hear the most commonly. They call that the love frequency, and it's supposed to be kind of our homeostasis or what we all hope to raise our frequency to. Although human frequency is like 8%, it's like 8 hertz or something, right?
Mhm.
Or between 8 and not 7 and 8 or 7 and 9, something like that.
Yeah, I think it used to be 7.8, but the vibration of the earth is also raising, so the frequency of the earth itself. But we normally kind of match whatever I think they call it the Schumann resonance,
Mhm.
is pretty much what our bodies are also resonating in.
Okay. And so is there a way to measure that, like, in our personal bodies individually?
I that would be amazing. If somebody knows, reach out.
Right, right. I would like to know that. So do you primarily just focus on using the 963, or is there any other frequencies that you work with?
Yeah, I used to, and I used to do all these different programs, but it's funny because even when I did that, I always the first base program was always what I called source, right? But I didn't really know exactly what that frequency was until I started using DMT. And what I realized, not the chemical,
Yeah.
but just tapping into that frequency, and so I started researching, okay, what
Mhm.
is this frequency? And I found it. So the DMT, which is a chemical that's released when we're born and when we die, and of course we can have psychedelic experiences with it, is measured at 963. And
Mm.
when I went into it a little bit more, I also found that they are measuring source frequency at 963. And for me, it's that frequency when we're born is transcribed in our
Mm.
DNA, and it's how we are holding the frequency of source that is our innate being. And our DNA is holding that. I think even Greg Baden has the God code, right? And I don't
Mm.
know a whole lot about his work, but he's right on.
Let's talk a little bit about what this means, because I'm sure our audience is going, "Okay, wait, what? How
Where's this
how do
going?
how do we do this?" So, please walk us through a kind of what is the process if we
Mhm.
were to try to shift into that frequency? What is the process for doing that?
As asking.
Mhm.
It's who we are already, and when we start to ask for that frequency to release on a cellular level, something starts to happen, and our cells start to remember that they're more than the programmed experience that we're having. And I call it the multidimensional body or the quantum body. Is right now we're using two strands of our DNA, and they say the other 10 are doing something, but they can't see what it's really doing because it's beyond form. It's in that multidimensional space. There's so much information in the frequencies of those dimensions, and our body is that. It already is. And
Mhm.
when we're asking that frequency to release in our body, we're raising the frequency of our physical form.
Mhm.
And then our consciousness is having the experience of what that is, where it starts to move out of, I am just this,
Mhm.
or I am just the thoughts that I have in my head, to tapping into that intelligence of source that is transcribed within us. And so it really starts to elevate not only the experience of our body, but of our life, because we start to live more in that flow state. We start to connect to life in a more beautiful way. I mean, just the way I like to is if you go to a yoga retreat.
Mhm.
You go to the yoga retreat and you're there and you are connected in the energies and you're flowing and you're connecting and you're having these thoughts, oh, when I get home, I'm going to do this. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to keep doing the yoga. And you may do it for 2 or 3 days. And then all of a sudden you're back into your old behaviors. It's because your body is programmed to live a certain way. All we're doing is we're creating that yoga retreat as your body. So no matter where you're going, you are the yoga retreat.
Mhm. I know listening to one of your courses, you talked about, um, you use the analogy of our bodies being a computer,
Mhm.
and that the computer runs programs. And so we download programs based upon our experiences, our environment, our culture, the family that we're raised in, all of that. And those are the programs that we're running on. And so, in order to shift out of those programs, we have to download a different program, a new program. And you describe that program as DMT, or divine or decoded molecular technology. I love how you do both, because people are more science oriented, you call it decoded, and if they're more spiritual, you say divine. They both work, and it's basically downloading a new program.
Mhm.
And you walked me through it. You didn't know you were, but I watched it on your course. And you said, ask yourself, what would it feel like to align with the 963 frequency? And I closed my eyes, and I am a meditator, so this is a very familiar space to me, and as soon as I asked myself that, I felt a shift, and I
Mhm.
could feel it all the way through my body. And I think what's important for people to grasp in talking about this concept is this fact that we have an innate intelligence within us that is listening and wanting to respond to what we're programming it with, right? It wants to do what we're asking it to do. So simply by asking your body, what would it feel like to shift into this frequency, to align the cells with this frequency? Your body knows what to do. So even if we don't have experience doing this, it doesn't mean that our bodies are not capable of doing it, right?
I say our bodies are it's holding the most advanced technology there is, and we're only experiencing 5 to 10% of what we're capable of,
Mhm.
and just by starting to communicate with that intelligence, it starts to show us.
Mhm.
And what I fully enjoy is asking those questions of
Mhm.
what would this experience be in 963 versus my programming. And what I love about it is it gives you somewhere for your consciousness to go, your awareness to go. So
Mhm.
you could just repeat the same behavior in the same way all the time, or okay, release the frequency of this same experience through the frequency of source, and then you just bring your consciousness into the frequency of what's releasing within your body. And all of a sudden, you're seeing things differently. It's actually not that hard. And
Yeah.
that's what's so crazy is with a little bit of practice, anybody can do this.
Yes. Yes. Well, I've been practicing and it's been fun. I also want to talk about your product line because you're also the founder of Becoming BioQuantum. And we've got a couple products here that we're going to go into more in depth. But we were talking about how every uh, s- skilled person has a set of tools. And your product line, I come from the beauty industry. I had a product line. I've worked with products for a long time. So I was super excited when I heard about Becoming BioQuantum because they're the tools that you created to help people be able to have this experience and be able to shift this experience. And you did it by actually infusing frequency into the product. I've never heard of this, never heard of this. I mean, amazing. So explain to me about how that came about.
Well, it really started when I started developing the Ormus and when I was given the alchemy, and it was follow the breadcrumbs,
Mm,
right? And so after I had created it, I started ingesting it and I immediately saw a frequency shift and a consciousness shift. And I just kept getting, okay, now go do this, now go do this. So I did a Bach flower remedy class and I was transferring frequencies of flowers. I was like, if I can do this with a plant, why couldn't I do it with cells? And so I lived in a community where a lot of people had injuries, and I would take the frequency of healthy cells of, let's say they had broken a bone, and I would put it in the Ormus and put it in a cream and they would rub it on that area. And people were just, I mean, healing in half the time, just some of the craziest things. I was like, gosh, there's something to adding frequency to this. And it went from there to I said this, in another interview, but to sending some of this cream to my ex-husband, and he put it on his face, not knowing it was supposed to be for his body, and he called it and he's all of my wrinkles are gone. And I was, "Woo, what are you doing putting that on your face?" And he's like, "You need to start a skincare line. This is amazing. I've never seen anything like this." And so I did. And at first I had a little resistance because I never had a facial. I didn't never wear makeup. Hippie at heart here. And but I did it. And now I understand why. It's because when you introduce a higher frequency to your body, in a scalar wave, your body will really hold it for about 12 hours. And then at that point, you want to reintroduce it. And what I saw was okay, the skincare is the delivery system of these frequencies that are activating our cells into their full potential. And so over time, if you're consistently bringing this technology into your body begins to remember that it is also all of this, not just the
Mm.
programming.
God, that's so powerful. I love it. You use a lot of terminology talking about your products that were words that I've never heard before. So let's define a couple of these. What is Ormus?
So ORMUS or ORME stands for orbited rearranged monoatomic element or unidentified substance. It's a multi I know,
Unidentified
whoa,
substance.
what? I know. Well, they say that because it is in a spin state.
Mm.
So you could see it as when you see the electron or it's spinning.
Hmm.
And what happens when you're looking at it under a microscope is that you'll see it and you'll say, oh, that's going to be copper. But then all of a sudden it disappears and then it comes back. And that's because it's spinning. And they call it multidimensional because when it's leaves, it moves into a space that you can no longer see. And when you're bringing that sort of element, whether you're bringing it in transdermally or you're ingesting it, you're bringing the frequency of both form and spirit into
Mm.
your body. And your body starts to remember, okay, I'm not just this. I'm also this. And it's easy to think of that it consciously. Like consciously, we know we're more than just our body. But for our body to know that before our consciousness, like it starts to turn on that higher operating system. And right, I mean, I feel like that what we're experiencing as the body is distorted because we're only operating in 2 of 12 of what we're supposed to. And so when we start to shift and have the experience of this higher divine operating system, everything starts to change. I mean, we start to heal instantly. Those commands that we do of what we want our body to experience, it's instant. And that's what we're going to be moving into. I mean, I really do believe that this is next is I say superpowers are real. And
Within our lifetime?
I would say yes. I'm
Mhm.
saying in the next 10 years, we're gonna be starting to see some pretty crazy things that people are gonna be
Oh,
doing.
wow. So define DMT because you use that a lot.
Yeah, so DMT, you could either see it as the chemical because it is the frequency that we're using, but I also call it divine molecular technology or decoding molecular
Mhm.
technology, and it's really about ascending the cells. It's about turning on that frequency on a DNA level and shifting the way our cells are running in this distorted operating system of mutation and aging and the loop that we all have agreed to into this higher operating system where we start to break timelines. And, uh, this all kind of started with can I break the timeline of aging and can we reverse that? And what I'm finding is that it's not actually as hard as we're making it.
Mhm.
And a lot of it is mastering where we're holding our consciousness. And that
Mhm.
is why it becomes a daily practice and a
Mhm.
practice of awareness. So DMT is the divine operating system, it is the quantum body.
Mhm. Well, and you are proof positive because when I met you, I really thought you were much, much younger. When you told me how old you were, I was like, "Oh my gosh, you are a walking billboard for this product and this technology that you're downloading because you do seem like you have just transitioned and out of the aging timeline. It's like your skin is flawless. I know you're all natural. You really are one of the most natural people I've ever met. So, kudos to you. It's working. And I got to tell you, since I started using it, I really do see changes in my skin. And I've had a lot of people giving me compliments and like, what are you doing? You look so much younger. And I'm like, well, I'm so glad you asked. Let me send you this podcast. So I'm just going to be forwarding on the podcast now when people ask me about it. But no, I'm very, very happy with it. The other term that you use a lot is scalar wave
Mhm.
or frequency. So what exactly is that?
Well, I think it's important to know the 2 different waves that there are, and maybe there's more and I just don't know about it, but the Hertz wave is one that diminishes over in time and space. So when you strum a guitar, you can feel it, you can
Mhm.
hear it if you're close
Mhm.
in, and then eventually it leaves and it's
Mhm.
gone. So all we're doing is taking that and
Mhm.
converting it to a scalar wave. So a scalar wave doesn't diminish over time and space. And I like to see it as maybe a Hertz wave is you're dropping a stone into the water and it ripples out and eventually it just calms down. But a scalar wave actually, it just kind of goes like this. It doesn't go,
Mm.
it's always there, and you can program it to where it's holding the same frequency all the time. So if we're programming a scalar wave, which is also another way of saying life force energy, like life
Mhm.
force energy is scalar frequency, and you put what you want it to be, right? So 963 was the frequency that we're doing, is it always is going to hold that frequency no matter
So
what.
every time you use the product, you're just adding on top of, because it's if it's not decreasing, it's still there from the last time you used it.
Yes.
So you're just keeping adding on top of it and building more and more in your body.
So the product itself will hold the frequency. But when we're bringing that frequency, so if we this let's just say this is
Mhm.
963 and
Mhm.
it's holding 963 and you're holding it and you can feel, okay, I can feel that. I can feel the 963. But if you're putting this frequency into a body that's holding 7.8 to 8 hertz, that's a huge frequency shift.
Mhm.
So that's why we have to gradually raise our frequency of our physical body. So
Mhm.
we may be able to connect into it consciously, but even then, if we aren't using the tools to be able to hold our consciousness there, it will go back into the programmed experience of our body. And that's why shifting the frequency on a cellular level is so much more powerful, because our body becomes the yoga studio or the
Mhm.
yoga retreat. And
Mhm.
then our consciousness is having the experience and begins to attune. And then all of a sudden, oh, everything is different. And I don't even know how. It just happened.
I love it. I'm so excited about where this is going because I'm using all of this. So give me an example, because I did buy quite a few of the products, and then but they're also kind of new to me, so I'm still learning what is the best and highest best use. This is the activator that I know must be the most important because it was the first one on your website, and you talked to Dave Asprey about it, and he was beyond over the moon. I mean, first of all, he was so smitten with you, I could tell. He was like, "Whoa, you're just so amazing." But he said about this product that he's like, "I don't like it because honestly, I it he goes, "I love the science behind it," and he goes, "This one baffles me." He's like, "I
Mhm.
could not recreate this on my own." He's like, "This is an incredible product." So to hear Dave Asprey talk about that, it's something really amazing. Tell me a little bit about the activator and what's the highest best use of this product?
So this one is created to I say put the cells of the skin into a higher spin state. So you could add it to whatever skincare you're already using, or you can use it with the skincare that we have. But it's basically going to bring the active ingredients into a more active state. That's why we call it the activator,
Mhm.
because the ormus is in a spin state. So the way you can see it, it's almost putting something alive that has life force energy into whatever you're using. And you
Mm.
also can just put it on your face as well. And it's going to start working with the cells, reminding them that they're both form and spirit. And it raises the frequency of your skin. You can use it on wounds, but also at the same time, and this is what I love about that this all came through as a skincare line, is our skin is also, especially on our face, is very close to the pineal gland, and that's one thing that Ormus is really known for, is opening and activating the pineal gland, which is where we start to get that direct guidance through source more on a conscious level, if you will, but it's also where DMT is released.
Mhm. And there's science behind this. This
Yeah.
is not just woo-woo stuff. I mean, everything that you talk about is scientifically based, and I did a little bit of more research on it, and I was like, this is and these are some of these things are ancient. Like,
Yeah.
this is ancient technology that
Mhm.
you're bringing forth, and I love that you are making it available to us because if we had to try to figure this out all on our own, it would take a lot of work. I also know that you can ingest this.
Yes.
how would be the best use of that?
I put it in my water,
Okay.
I put it in my coffee, I this morning, I put some under my tongue,
Mhm,
so there's no right or wrong way to do
mhm,
it. It just you can even just put it on your pulse points. I
mhm.
actually on my website, I have a resource page where you can use this specific ormus for cell ascension, and each you go through each there are 12 different codes that are connected to the DNA, and it's working on the universal laws. It's working on how your body is absorbing nutrients, and it's doing all these fun things. So you have somewhere to focus for about a week in the frequency of what's happening in your body. And all it's doing is it's showing you, okay, this is a program belief that I was taught or that my body is looping in. And when we start to open up and bring that program into a higher frequency, it changes. The perspective of it changes. And you're having that experience consciously, and you start to question, what have I been agreeing to this whole time? Because I'm starting to have these insights and awarenesses that I didn't have before. And that's when it gets really fun because you start to connect into that higher operating system and start to challenge the belief systems that were there before.
And what I love about this is that we hear about this all the time. We know that we have belief systems, subconscious program that's running in the background. We have heard since the beginning of time that we only use 10% of our capabilities. And we know that we have intuitive properties that maybe we're not uh, utilizing to its fullest potential. So
Mhm.
I understand that what you're talking about is gonna sound foreign to a lot of people, but it's like the more that you open your mind to it and open the fact that you can understand this, just because you haven't heard it before doesn't mean that it's not understandable. And the more that you open yourself to it, the more it's you start resonating with it. And the first time I started reading, I mean, I knew right away, I'm like, wow, she's onto something that's very unique. And I got very excited about it. So I know that was my indication I was going down the right direction. And the first time I read through it, I'm like, "Wow, this is a lot. This is a lot to take in." It seemed really, like, above my pay grade. And, listening more and more to your explanations and trying the products, and now when I read through it, it's like, "Oh, this is totally doable. I get this." Like, it just clicked inside of me, and you were saying that. You were saying, "Just keep opening yourself up to it. Open yourself up to the idea of it. Open yourself up to the possibility of it." You know, ask yourself, "What would this feel like?" And your body knows more than we do, and I really hope that our viewers get to e take the time that it takes to really experience this and to try
Mhm.
it, because what you're saying is so dead on, and my experience of it has been so amazing. I'm gonna tell a story, but first we have to talk about the copper card. Oh my gosh. Copper-coated card. You're gonna have to describe this, but I'll tell you how much I love it in a second.
So this has the so I have the technology that you'll see everywhere, which is a symbol.
Mhm,
And that technology is what's taking the cells from observing its programming, the looping cycle, the old operating system, distorted operating system, and shifting it into observing through frequency. And then I have these 12, what I call DMT codes, that are decoding molecular technology and
mhm,
turning on the higher operating system. And each code has a specific frequency. It's working, like I was said before, it's working with the universal law, it's working with an organ of the body, it's working with the nutrients. So it's doing all these things that our body is either agreed to, that is creating that looping cycle that's creating the timeline of cell mutation, or it's shifting that to this higher operating system where we start to realize that's not true. That's a loop that's keeping me stuck. I mean, you talk
mhm.
about the universal laws. If you really, really sit in them, every single one of them is through an observation that's keeping us sleeping. It's keeping us dependent on a frequency outside of ourselves. If you
Give me an
really, really
example of
say,
that.
okay, so the law of attraction. I love this one because this one was probably s- one of my biggest aha moments when I was sitting in what is the law of attraction. And so I was divorcing my second husband, and I had a kid in college. We had my bills were around $11,000 a month. And
Mm.
at the time, my business was making 25. But I knew I needed to do it. So I did it. We were in the process of it. And I was in the shower one day. God, I always say that God or divine is in the bathroom. So I'm in the shower and I'm thinking, okay, well, I need to have this many more people and I need to find the people that resonate with me. And, I need to have all this align. I need to attract it. Right. And then all of a sudden, I just had this huge, like my body just, that divine operating system just fully turned on. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, oh my gosh. And what I realized is I need to turn on the frequency and bring my consciousness into it and behind it and have the expression of that frequency. Because every time that I'm relying on something outside of myself, I'm seeing it through my programming and I'm asking for it through my programming. So when it's like, oh, the law of attraction, I want to have this, we're holding that from our programming. So we're just having the experience through another level of programming. And so the only way to do it is to move consciousness outside of that. So I turned it on. I moved my consciousness into it. And then all of a sudden, I was existing outside of it and it wasn't easy. And I mean, you have to self actualize in a frequency that you don't know. But it was the fastest thing. I'm talking within a week. I took my business from 25 to 10,000, exactly what I needed to do it. And I did it all by just kept going back into that frequency. And it was scary, but
Mhm.
I began to master it and I realized, okay, this is what it is to live outside of our programming. This is
Mhm.
what it is to not be reliant on a law that is governing how we do things because there is no law when you're existing in the frequency of source.
Mm.
There's no need for law because
Mhm.
it's the ultimate intelligence. And it doesn't mean that we, as the human, that is true. But we are this innate frequency. We are the frequency of source. And so it's our job to use our tool of consciousness to be this, not to entertain the programmed reality, the matrix,
Mhm.
the programmed body, all of those things. But it's so easy because it's what we know and we can see it. We can observe it. We're told it. All the scriptures have said this and this and this. So we have to believe it. But this is the truth.
So, is it the same as I've heard that abundance is a frequency? So, if you want to attract abundance in your life, it's about shifting to the frequency of abundance. Is that the same thing as what you're talking about?
I would say that's similar, but how I would do it, because abundance has a frequency in the matrix. If you were to measure it, it would be, let's say, 428, let's just make it up. I don't know what it is. But abundance in the frequency of the intelligence of source is still 963.
Mm.
Right? So we're turning that frequency on and it's the purest form of abundance.
Mhm.
It's so pure, but that it has an intelligence. And that's why we can bring everything into that experience because even love,
Mm.
right? Love is 528. That has a state of consciousness in it. But the next question would be, well, what is love in the frequency of source? I mean, even just asking yourself, you can tell your body is shifting into another frequency. I don't know if you can feel it, but I can feel it
Mhm.
because I'm so used to having the experience from these different places. And it's just different. I don't know how else to explain it.
Mhm.
Go have fun with it, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's just bringing everything to that frequency. So you can press on the codes to create different experiences. So when you're pressing on the codes, it's activating that frequency in the cells, turning on that divine operating system. I go like this because I'm turning it on. And then and then you bring your consciousness into the experience of that. So if it's manifestation, all right, let's do the code. Usually
Mhm.
there are 6 codes and you just put your finger on it until you feel the shift. You go to the next code, you go to the next code, you go to the next code. And you're witnessing that frequency
Mhm.
turning on in your body. It's seeing it turn on that divine operating system, that technology. and then you have somewhere for your consciousness to go
Mhm.
and have the experience, and then you witness the experience from that space.
So I was trying to describe this to my son, um, and I used the analogy that it's like a radio and tuning a radio. So, if you turn it to 98.7, you're gonna get a very specific radio station, right? You don't see it happening. You don't know where there's no visual proof that it's occurring. But once you switch to that frequency, you hear that vibration or that frequency, right? The sound of 98.7. And this, I kind of feel like, is the same thing. So it's almost like the codes create the dial, and the recipes on the back, the shift codes, show us what order to do it in to create the different experiences that we
Mhm.
want. So I got to tell the story because this was so, so fun. I ordered the products. I get the products in the mail, and I had two of my girlfriends here, and I'm like, guys, look at what we got. Like, let's practice with it. So we pulled out the activator, and I put the activator. We all put the activator on our wrists, and we rubbed our wrists. First of all of my veins. Does this happen to you? Like, all of my veins immediately, I have very flat veins normally.
Mhm.
They're still like that. Like, it hasn't changed. They actually raised. So something in the activator immediately went into my bloodstream and activated something. I was like, wow, this is like pretty powerful stuff. So we all did that. Then we all uh, pulled out the card. We picked our shift that we wanted to create. I think two of us did abundance and one of us did manifestation, and we all did our. And when you, and to your point, like when you put your finger on it and you think about it, like you can like feel a shift in your body. It's like the most unique thing ever. So we all did, and we were talking about how powerful this felt. So we went through the combination, and then we're like, oh my gosh, it's late for dinner. We got to go. We all got up. We went to Mastro's over here. And Masters on a Saturday night, typically it's like packed. We were thinking, oh, good luck. We're probably not going to find a seat. We walk in, and just miraculously in this crowded place, there were 3 seats together. We were like, wow, how lucky is this? We sit down. All of a sudden, I turned to my left and I saw the most beautiful man I have ever seen in my life. Like, you have that image of like what the most beautiful man in the world would look like. He was sitting like 2 doors down from me. I was like, oh, I got so nervous. I couldn't even look over there. I'm like, that is the most beautiful man I've ever seen in my entire life. Then we start talking, and all of a sudden, 3 champagne glasses arrive in front of us, and the bartender came up and he said, this gentleman would like to share his champagne with you. He's like, it's an $1,100 bottle of Cristal. And we're like, oh, okay, wow, thank you. That doesn't happen every day. Right? By the end of the day, we had our entire bill picked up. We were dying. We were like laughing so hard. It was like the funnest night of our life. And we kept going like this because we were like, it's working. And to this day, the girls went out, they bought the product. We are all like such devout users now because immediately, the very first time we used it, we saw a shift. We really did. We felt the shift. So, do you have experiences of people talking about experiences that they have had when they started using the products?
Yes, you know what I love about that is there was something about the 3 of you doing it together. So I just people that are listening, if you have a couple of friends, do it together because there was something about that dynamic that intensified it. And isn't that always true when we come together in an experience, it intensifies it. But so yes, with the card, I would say one I'll bring up oh gosh, who do I want to do? Who do I want to do? Who do I want to do? Well, where do we want to go? More through the body or in manifesting?
What do you think is the one that people can do the easiest? Let's do
Probably
manifesting. Everybody wants to
manifesting.
manifest.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll give you one of my personal ones just because I thought this was super fun. So I was interviewing this guy, and he had made this device, this really complicated quantum device that was supposed to be for, I think it's just so cute, for parking spots. And I was like, oh, I don't really live somewhere where that matters, but every once in a while it does. And so I decided I'm going to see if I can do that with the quantum card. So I came up with the code that would be for a parking spot and I did it. And ever since then, it's everywhere I go, I have the best parking spot. So I know that's like not even that important, but I just get a kick out of it.
Wow, that's crazy. I love that one. Well, I know that you talked about, somebody that had a pin in their toe. Tell me
Yeah.
that story.
So that was with the Ormus.
Mhm.
And it was when I was really doing a lot of hands-on
Mhm.
work with people. So she had had a screw. I can't remember exactly what happened,
She
if she
probably
had
broke her
broke
toe
her
or something,
toe,
yeah.
and she had a screw put in it, and she was actually having a like, she was coming to me, and we were working on the healing of it and all of that, and then it's almost like it started hurting her more,
Mm.
and I was like, I wonder what's happening," and so I kinda used my vision. I was like, her foot is pushing out because it's the bone was trying to heal and it was
Mm.
pushing out. So she actually had to go back and have it removed because the bone pushed out
Pushing
the
out.
screw.
Oh
And
my
so when she came
gosh.
back after her second surgery to have the screw removed, she came in and she's like, "Oh, I now have to go through all of this healing again because they had to take out the." So we go on and we do it, and she had a boot that she was wearing, right? And so she would get off, and I was walking her to the door, and she's like, "Oh, I only have one shoe." And we had forgotten that she had the boot on. And we thought, "Oh, my dog took her shoe." We're like looking all over for her shoe, and we remembered, "You're supposed to be wearing your boot." And she was fine. I know.
Wow. My
It's
goodness.
really fun what's possible when we just bring our intention into that frequency. Our bodies can do so much.
So it's clear that you have, an innate guidance,
Mm.
divine guidance. Tell me about that. When were you aware of kind of the special gifts that you have?
I think I've always been aware of it to a certain degree. I got kicked out of the house when I was 16 because I was a wild child, and I went to AA actually, and I connected with my sponsor, and she saw that I had the gift of seeing, and I didn't know that it was a thing. I just thought it was just who I was. I didn't know it was something that I could use to do good and to help people, and that kinda started my whole journey of healing. I really dove into I became Reiki and anything mind, body, spirit. I just was totally in. And as I kept advancing, I got to a place where I knew I had to stop learning and start remembering. And that's really when turned everything off and I just went inside and just started that communication. And it started to intensify. And it was great for my work, but I was still kind of struggling on being able to hold my consciousness in that state because when you're healing, you really go to that theta state, right? You go into that space. I was like, how can I bring this into my everyday life? And so I started practicing it. And I'll never forget the time I was at the post office and there was this long line and I was supposed to be somewhere, but I had to mail this package and it had to be then. And I knew I was gonna be late, and my mind started going into, "Oh, I'm gonna be late. I wish they would hurry up," go through all the
Mhm.
stories, and then all of a sudden, I could feel that same frequency turn on in my body of when I would do my healing work. And I was like, "Oh, I wonder what will happen if I go here." And so I brought my consciousness into that experience, and all of a sudden everything almost slowed down even more. It was kind of in those movies when you
Like the
see and
Matrix,
it's
like,
like,
"We're here."
and that's what it felt like, but it was so peaceful and so still, and all of a sudden, I started recognizing what was happening around me, and there was this little kid on the floor that was playing with this dog, and there was a guy that was helping an old lady come in, and there's just all these beautiful moments that it was like if I as soon as I got out of my head, it was like the most beautiful experience, and somehow time stopped, And the next thing I knew, I was at the front of the line and I got to my appointment, and there's no way all of that could have happened in the amount of time it did. But
Mm,
because I went into that state, miracles happened. And so
mm.
that's when I started to realize, all right, there's something to this frequency, and just kept getting me closer and closer to what was possible.
Yeah. This is a lot to take in. There's a lot going on here. Thankfully, on your website, you have an academy, Ascension Academy, where you teach courses and you talk about your products, but you also talk about how people can use these technology, these tools that you're teaching in their own life, how they can make it part of their daily practice. And so, talk to us a little bit about what people can find there.
Right. So the Ascension Academy it's really developed of teaching how to hold consciousness and frequency
Mm,
and to self-actualize and then keep going and keep going. And the class that I recommend starting with is the BioQuantum Foundations.
mhm,
It actually goes through the technology and
mhm,
the different tools, because once we have the tools to be able to do that, I really were unstoppable. When I created the foundations class, I wanted to create a class that could be mastered, where if you continued to use the tools, you would get to a place where you never had to take a class again because you became the ultimate technology. So meaning every time you wanted to go to the computer and Google something, you could literally Google yourself and have the answer come through the frequency of the divine. So I put this class together where it teaches all of the tools of how to hold your consciousness in that abstract frequency long enough that you can actually attune into the intelligence and get the answer every single time. And at the same time, you're activating your body and raising it into a higher frequency. So I always recommend starting there, because once you have the foundation, everything just goes so much faster, because when you're remembering or when you're bringing in information outside of your programming, everything speeds up and
mhm,
there's a difference between remembering and learning.
mm,
I mean, just think about what those two experiences are. Remembering, once you remember it, you remember it.
mhm,
And it's there.
mhm. There's also a place on your website where people can book sessions with you,
Mm,
and I was able to book a session with you, and that was really helpful in order to be able to connect and really, get to have those, I think, 25 minutes. That was super fun too. Um, so I know you have something fun coming up. Why don't you share with us
mhm.
what's about to be released?
Yes, so I have my next book coming out called BioQuantum, and it's going through my journey of from the beginning all the way up to DMT, and there's a little bit about the codes in there, the quick shifts and some different stuff, but it's really going through the process of cell ascension and
Mhm,
what consciousness goes through as we move through the ascension. I talk about the foundational pieces and the different tools that you can do to learn to hold consciousness and frequency and have the experience of your quantum body and really break out of those looping cycles that I feel like we're ready,
mhm,
right? We're at a place where we're ready, and this is just one avenue of doing it. And if it lights you up, the book is a great place to start, because it's going to be a lot. I'm not going to lie.
mhm,
It's a lot of information. So it's one of those ones where just keep going back, because
mhm,
every time you go back, you're gonna hear it in a new
mhm.
way.
Yeah. And I've found that with your work, like the more that I read it and the more that I'm exposed to it, I feel like it just starts clicking and gets easier as you go along. And it's really been a great addition to my meditation practice because, you get into the habit of meditating, but then you know that there's something a little bit higher or a little bit deeper, however you want to say it, a little more. And adding the teachings that you have brought have been so amazing and helped me learn how to shift myself into a higher frequency. So appreciative of that.
Mm.
Thank you so much. I'm going to make sure that we have all of your links on your webpage. You can on our website, and I know you have a couple social media links where people can follow you as well. So Thank you so much for coming on, and I so appreciate having you here.
Thank you, Delphine. This has been amazing. I really appreciate you just holding this space to allow all of this to come through.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Delphine Circle. Don't forget to subscribe. It's free and it will help us keep these incredible interviews coming your way. Here are 2 other episodes you may enjoy. I'm Delphine. Welcome to my circle.